You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Welcome to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. Each week, we'll take a deep dive into the world of volatility with in-depth analysis, trading activity reviews, strategy breakdowns, cutting-edge education, and much more. We'll also bring you exclusive conversations with the traders, researchers, and asset managers who are reshaping the volatility landscape. If it involves volatility, then you'll find it on Volatility Views. Volatility Views is brought to you by MIAX, one of the fastest, most efficient trading platforms in the world. MIAX is proud to bring you SPKEX volatility products. SPKEX options and futures are traded on the SPKEX Volatility Index, SPKE, offering pinpoint accuracy, radically faster dissemination, and a highly transparent settlement auction, all for ultra-low exchange fees. It's volatility reimagined. Learn more about SPKEX at myaxoptions.com/spikes. Options and futures involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. The statements made are provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied on for financial or legal advice. And now, it's time to take a deep dive into the world of volatility. It's time for Volatility Views.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back one final time for the week for all you on-demand folks out here. Time for Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-exciting, ever-compelling Options Insider Radio Network. Reminding you, wherever you get this content, on the on-demand side, we know you are legion. On the on-demand side, if you like what you hear, keep rating and reviewing. These are hot times. New folks are discovering the world of options and, as a result, the world of volatility all the time. So if you like what you hear, do keep rating and reviewing. Could be on this show, could be on the full network, could be on our app. However you get the content, just leave a review there. It does help the legion of new folks discover the content every month out there. And, of course, if you want to go above and beyond, you need more than your lives and the 2 shows coming at you a day on the network. You want, let's say, exclusive pro Q&As like we did earlier this week with Dan the Man Grams, talking about all things futures, options. Man, that was a fun and wide-ranging conversation. You want to get access to some fun stuff later today. You don't want your broadcast week to end with volatility views. You want to join us for Options Oddities a little bit later today. Man, there's going to be some fun trades to talk about there. Can't wait for that one. That should be fun. I'm sure Rock Lobster will have umbrage aplenty for that episode. And then, of course, you want live access to everything we do throughout the week. You want great giveaways. You want even bonus fun content, like I did a great hit last night with Dan and a few others for the Harvard Business School last night talking about options. That was a paid event. But for you pro folks, it's going to come hitting the pro feed a little bit later today to the pros. So a little free bonus there, all kinds of fun stuff like that, and a whole bunch more. Where do you go to get access to all that cool stuff? Theoptionsinsider.com/pro. is the place to go to join us on our journey to the dark side of volatility and beyond. Let's see who's joining us on today's journey to the dark side of volatility. Even though, I guess vol is turning a little bit to the dark side. We are joined by the Dark One himself, the rockingest of lobsters, Mr. Andrew GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com, beaming in from his compound on the storm-lashed shores of Maine. Mr. Rock Lobster, welcome back to the program, sir.
It is good to be here. I'm actually umbrage free as of this moment. We'll see what we can do during the show to change that, but just so the listeners know, I'm coming in umbrage free as of this moment.
You have purged yourself of your umbrage? Wow, that's a huge weight lifted off your shoulders. You must feel much lighter as a result.
Oh, yeah, quite a bit actually.
You are burdened daily with the albatross of umbrage, sir. So I'm glad to see it has lifted. We'll see if we could put it back around your neck as we keep on rolling right on into the volatility review.
It's time to break down the latest developments in the volatility trading world. It's time for the Volatility Review.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Volatility Review, the portion of the show where we do just that. We break down the week that was and indeed still is from a vol trading and trending and analysis and all sorts of fun perspectives. And it seems like we are not in store for a whipsaw kind of day out there. It seemed like we were trending that way at first because we were rallying the markets. Then we saw the markets start to turn back to the dark side. Got almost back down to where we started the day, and then we have since been pretty much in rally ho mode ever since, back north of the 3,700 level in the S&P, right around 37 and a quarter when we kicked off the show. Up nearly 60 handles, or about 1.6% when we started the show. So a green end to the week here, a very whipsaw-y kind of turbulent week out there, listeners. Dow up about 1.8%, NASDAQ up about 1 1/3% out there. That means all of our vol friends, at least for right now, taking a bit of a break. But of course, you don't like that. Just wait 5 minutes in these markets and we'll see what we got. Spikes when we kicked off the show, 30 1/4, down exactly 2 points from where it was last week. VIX cash, 29.5, so back below the 30 handle, down about 2 3/4 points. We flirted with below 30 a couple of times earlier this week, but we always whipsawed right back out of it. We'll see if that happens again today, if we can hang out and even close below 30. And VVIX at an 86, down a whopping 17 points. So vol is not quite as frothy as it was this time last week, listeners. Our old friend, the Viking, a.k.a. VSPKES, also taking a drubbing this week as well. It's at a 105. That's down a whopping 22 points from where it was this time last week. Again, for those of you who are not yet as familiar with the Viking, the low came about 89.5 back in late July of this year, and the high was almost 206 back in December of last year. So at 105, we're very much near the low end of that range. So a lot to unpack. Mr. Rock Lobster, a very whipsaw-y kind of week, and not quite as aggressive as last week. Obviously, we saw the mother of all whipsaws last week. Not quite to that extent, but we still did see a lot of bouncing around this 3,700 level for most of the week. We are doing it yet again today. What is lighting up your tape out there, sir?
Well, I would say that the lack of volatility in volatility is catching my eye for sure. That's the thing I find. Well, that's the reason, because we're stuck at 3,700. This has been the most uninteresting 30 VIX market that I can remember.
That's a good way to put it, because you're totally right. It's a boring 30 VIX.
I like in the old, I'm like, woo, it's there, like we're moving. And, I feel, this is what's weird. I'm liking it to the interest rate thing. One thing that people haven't talked about interest rates, like, oh, they're raising interest rates. They're raising interest rates. Well, anybody think they've probably been 300 or 400 basis points too low for the last 3 or 4 years? Maybe we should just get them up there and we gotta somehow right this fiscal madness ship. And maybe this is like, hey, just start charging, government printing money. None of this is free. Okay. I think hopefully this puts the stake in the heart of the MMT madness. But things are just kind of, I guess, what we'll just say. I think that those zero rates were kind of the new normal, that they just believed that that should be the way, and all this facilitation by central banks. Now they realize they can't do that anymore. Okay, they tried, they had their fun, and now it's done. And volatility at this point, the equity market is relatively small next to all the bond markets, sovereign debt, and all that. So it makes sense that equities are being whipped around like crazy, because every pronouncement by the Fed has, really, huge implications for profitability, business, and all that at this point. In the old days, the economy kind of worked, and the Fed just tried not to screw it up. These days, they've actually tried to somehow, micromanage policy, which I don't think anybody's been ever very good at doing. But we do have a relatively high vol, and I'm watching VIX go from 32 this week, roughly, down to 29.70 or so. And the November 27 puts I own are up a nickel, a nickel on the 3-point drop. This is the lowest vol I have ever seen. So the only thing I did right was just, okay, I see the vol is low. It's super low. Vol is low. So I'm going to not jump in. So I only have 5 contracts on in November. Nothing, because I figure I've seen this movie before. They're going to take VVIX down to 78 by the time the election rolls around. And the Nov 27 puts will probably be $1 in the money, and they'll still be only $1, because we have this inability of VIX to move. And what I mean by that is, it's not that VIX can't go up or down 1 point. The traders really price like, okay, what's the tail? What's the how easy is it for us to get out of the tail? And that's when we talk about skew and stuff like that, right? Where, if at the money vol is high enough, all of a sudden all vol boats are lifted, and they don't have a lot of those outside, let's just call them more out of the money options, don't have to be skewed up as much, because they're already pretty expensive. And volatility is high enough, and the liquidity provider can sell it, because the gamma of the option is so low, right? So it's a tradable thing. When you're looking at skews and more severe movement in skew, that's usually when you have changes involved from 16 to 24 or something like that, or from 12 to 16 or 12 to 18, because then the change on those vols is so, those numbers are relatively huge. Right now, market's down 1 or 2%. Who cares when the straddle's already trading $25? Okay, we're down $5, $6. Straddle's $20 for a week out. So who cares, right? So once the vol is high enough, right, and it's clear, though, that the liquidity providers are not buying a ton of it back, right? So there aren't a lot of natural sellers, at least overwhelming the market. So that's the position I think that VIX is in right now. Nobody is worried about VIX going to 20 by the election. Nobody, right? I'm looking at the 24 put. You can buy all you want for 24 cents. Okay. And that's the bottom of zone 4. Historically, this is where you're in the highest quartile of all, and 75% of the time we're below this. And with a month to go, you can buy all the 24 puts you want for 24 cents. That is extremely low, in my view. The 20 put is a penny at 4 cents. So I guess there's a bid now for it. But they're just not looking for traders. There's no appetite for a real drop in vol. If folks thought volatility could really fall apart, as in this whole rate regime thing sort of slows down or changes pace or something, that would get us to 20. So right now, I think that is out of the market. And then I guess the Wall Street Journal now, the Fed leaks to the Wall Street Journal. I don't know when this started. That for sure they're raising 75 basis points, but they're going to examine interest rates and how, if they're raising too fast or something like some kind of instead of just having an announcement, they just give us more flim-flammery in the meantime. I would assume that is to kind of calm things down before the election, right? I can't see a real reason to do that instead of that. So again, tin full of hat time. So from a vol point of view, vol is very inexpensive. You can buy the 35, 27 strangle in VIX for $2.40. That is hard to believe. At the beginning of the year, when we were trading at a 31 vol, that same strangle was like $4.50. And right now, that strangle is $2.40 with VIX in relatively the same place. So, but again, in that time, Russians invading, or Fed doing something with rates, like there's so many like what's going to happen, right? Or none of that happens, and then we go back to 16 or 18 vol. So those I would say those big tail type things are not being priced into the November options. Nobody cares, and nobody cares to buy it. So it's one of those things where, we said on the show like a zillion times, it's all relative. Where a lot of VIX and VIX pricing and all that is, it's still math and how much things are moving in the SPX and what the vol is in the SPX. And I think that's what we have today. So I think for the first day, we have actually got into some kind of contango. I got to look again here because things might have changed in the last 20 minutes. Nope, still can't get that cash VIX under futures. So there's still pretty good, there's still that little upward lift in short-term volatility. It's not going away yet. So the market still can't, I would say, shake that. It still can't shake that short-term vol move currently, and with reason, right? That these Fed pronouncements are so enormous. If they say anything that they're going to take the rate hikes down, anything at all, like we'll go shooting up 3 or 4 or 5% in SPX. So the traders, the vol really isn't hard to price. It's tougher to price, I would say, like the gamma and, the SPX options and like how much gamma do you want to sell? Like vol itself is going to be in a relatively tight range, even with SPX moving 1, 2, 3%. And I think that's sort of what we're dealing with right now, Mark, in my view. And you could probably, I'm looking at this strangle. I'm not buying any of it again because I have a feeling it's going to $2.
I say you have been loving the strangle. You have been loving the strangle for a while.
I know. And actually, last term it would have paid if I actually would have sold my puts out. It would have paid well.
If I hadn't just gotten run over on some puts myself, I might be more enthused by your strangle, but I have a hard time seeing either leg of that paying off a ton. I mean, the puts, we know they just go to die now. And the calls, you have, 30 seconds on a Tuesday to cash those out? And if you miss it, that's it. That's your window.
And that's exactly the story, right? That's why it's trading so low. Because people aren't looking for, they're not looking at VIX for any sort of instant gratification in the November cycle. So I find it, but that's what it is. But for me, when vol gets super cheap, I can't help but buy it because, historically for me, it's better to buy vol when you don't need it than when you do. There's plenty of expensive stuff to sell in equities and stuff like that where things are kind of juicy, and hedge your risk in VIX. So I think that as a trade is really good right now, right? Where you could hedge a catastrophe in VIX for almost nothing, right? Like a real market, something meltdown horrible. VIX is costing like $1 a contract. And, that gives you a lot of room to sell, juice and other things that I think are pretty juicy, a lot of equities and stuff. So it sets up well for somebody that wants to kind of run a book, something like that.
Yeah, theoretically, I don't hate it. Just practically what we're seeing out there. It's a challenge. Got to help you if you missed that 30-second window to sell those calls because that's it.
Yeah. You get
You're done.
On Thursday, right? We were
yes.
Like, everything looked horrible.
Yes.
And I had all I could do to get my offers into the market, and I still could not get everything I had sold. It was a real bummer. to be quite
That's
honest.
just the way. That's the way VIX is these days. It's you have these moments, these windows, and they're shorter than ever. It seems like now. They used to have some time. Maybe you'd even have a day. At least a few hours. Now you're talking minutes, and it is a challenging trade.
8 minutes.
Yeah, totally. So if you have a day job, listeners, if you're not glued to your screens 24/7. This trade is not for you because you're not going to get it off.
It really is bad. It's like if you don't fill on the open sometimes when SPX plunges, that's it. Like you're chasing the bid all the way down.
That's it, and then it's gone. It's just it's like sand through your fingers here. Let's see what else is going on out there this week, listeners. Let's get on out to the land of the futures. We just had a big talk about Spikes futures with Matt and the folks from MIAX over there. Those are continuing to grow, continuing to tighten things up, which, of course, leads to tighter options markets. I'm curious for you folks, if you've been dabbling out there in the Spikes options as a result, maybe in the futures, hit us up. Let us know. I want to hear your stories. We have seen a lot more of the smaller paper accreting out there in Spikes options, which is fun. That means that the retail folks are starting to come play out there doing their 5 lots and their 10 lots and their 20 lots. And so it's always good to see that kind of stuff. So let us know what your thoughts are, what kind of experience you're having out there, because it's always intriguing for these new products as they continue to build the ecosystem. Speaking of the ecosystem, let's go out to the VIX futures curve. That's a pretty established ecosystem by now, obviously. When we kicked off the show, obviously October rolled off the board recently, so took some OI with it. November now, the front contract coming in towards the end of the year, listeners. All these contracts that seem so distant out there on the horizon, the Nov and D's contracts, those are now the front contracts out there. So we are up against it. We are right there in that period that has been historically priced in for a fair amount of juice, and this year has been as well. That Nov futures were kind of above everything for most of the year until recently out there. So Nov coming into the start of the show was off almost 2.5 points, about 2.4 points, and the D's future was off not quite 2 points, about 1.8 points. And if you go out a little bit farther on the curve, last week at this time, you couldn't find a single future that was below 30. This week, you got to go all the way out to April, and that is the only future right now above 30. So the entire curve has shifted down a wee bit in the intervening week. Mr. Rock Lobster, anything catching your eye out there in the vol surface, sir?
This is the first time where it's starting to resemble some kind of like a little bit of a contango shape, a little vol lower in the front, a little steeper in the back. But
could it be business in the front, party in the back, like your friends like to say?
like the Thompson boys? Yeah,
I got to get them back on the show to discuss their mullets and Tulums.
I think you should. Yeah, I think they were so successful in 2020 that they don't have to talk to anybody anymore.
They're retired
down their doors.
They're on their little island now.
Yes, I think they might be on their little island. Well, it's when you have a fund that has a couple of tails laying around and and then like the vol goes to a gajillion, they're like, oh wow, this worked out well. Anyway, so but I would still Dr. VIX would still call this a flat curve, although it is getting a little less so, right? Because the volatility from November to June is pretty flat. 2 cents separates the Nov contract and the June contract. So it's a very flat curve, and VIX is still at 29. So it's still very much, again, I think the flatter the VIX curve is, and this is from observation, just looking at this for the last 10 years, the more potential volatility is in VIX index itself. When you get this flat shape, VIX cash tends to move a little more. When we're in backwardation, it tends to kind of just, sort of move up a little bit, and then when we're in contango, it moves down. But the flatter it is, generally the width of moves, which is what I find so odd right now. It's a lot of conflicting signals, I would say. Not your normal market, I guess, is the easiest way to put it. So it is a very flat curve, but it's moving more toward a contango from backwardation. So I think, if anything, all signs from last week to this week is, I would say, bearish VIX and bearish vol. Just because that's what the curve is showing. Now let's see if I go to, here's the number. What do you think the 10-day realized vol in SPX is?
Oh, 10-day realized in SPX? Oh, good grief.
Yeah.
That's got to be up there. That's got to be probably, I'm going to say a 30.
Yeah, 2909. So
it's like I've done this before or something.
It's almost like you've done this before. So the last month has been pretty dang volatile. So where's VIX going to go when 30-day vol is 28? It's like you have to have something has to change. Now, of course, the election, any more certainty about rates, things like that. Putin decides that he's tired of invading Ukraine. That would be nice. There's lots of things that could, there could be some positives there. They announced that the deficit is dropped by a record amount this year because they stopped extra discretional spending. They won't say that, but that's good news overall, right? At least they're not spending more money than they did last year. So I get that's a positive from that point of view. As far as the curve, it's still flat, but it's not as bearish stocks as it was last week.
Let's see what's going on out there in the land of the vol options. We were joking for quite a while about all the funky in-the-money options open over there on Spikes. Most of those were October, so most of those have rolled off the board now. We're still waiting to see what replaces it. That said, the top couple of positions here, number one position in Spikes right now are still the NOV 12s, and right behind it we have the NOV 160 puts, so someone's going back to the well again. No spread this time. Before, there were some spreads, 170, 180 put spreads. This is just straight up 160 puts. So there's your top positions at Spikes, the NOV 12s and the NOV 160 puts. So apparently it wasn't all October all the time. The madness persists out there. Oh, D's 10s. Yeah, folks are living it up in the money contracts. Why this is happening in Spikes, I'm still not sure, but it's intriguing nonetheless out there. Listen, are you some of the ones? Are you to blame for this in the money madness over there in Spikes? Hit us up. Let us know. I'm curious what you're up to out there. Let's see what's going on out there in the land of VIX options. And a fairly robust day, all things considered. Not blowing the doors off, but it's above the ADV just about a month ago. Remember that ADV was below 400,000 not too long ago. So we're at 438 already right now. So a pretty active day. The ADV is 662 now. That has trended up nearly 40,000 contracts over the course of the past week. A little bit of whipsaw action and some madness out there. That'll do it. And let's see what's going on from a top positions out there. And you know what? Listen, this is the first time in quite some time where the entirety of the top 10 of VIX options is all calls. Not a single put to be found in the top 10. For a long time, it's been, 8-2, 7-3, somewhere along those lines. All the puts are gone. October took all the puts with them, and now it's all calls all the time. Listeners, read into that what you will. Top 10, number 10, 124,000 of the Jan 70s. I think we're going to come back to that in a few minutes. Number 9, $126 of the D60s. Number 8, 149,000 of the NOV 40s. Number 7, $154 of the D70s. Starting to get a bit of a pattern here, listeners. Number 6, $155 of the Feb 80s. Number 5, $163 of the NOV 35s. Number 4, 20K of the March 75s. Number 3, 244 of the NOV 70s. Number 3, 284,000 of the NOV 60s. And the top dog in VIX options right now, 312,000 of the NOV 50s. So a bunch of different ways to carve up that upside, listeners. There's ratios, there's upside with futures, a lot of different ways people have been attacking this upside for the better part of this year. And it looks like that is going on again today, because what's active out there, what is going on to drive this 434,000 contract, listeners? It looks like our 1x5 friend is back again, Mr. Rock Lobster. It was the biggest, most active contract today are the Jan 70s. We're just talking about these. Jan 70s going up 100,000 times already today, listeners. That's against pretty much 20,000 of the Jan 35s. Does that sound familiar? 1 by 5. We have seen that dance before. Number 2 most active contract today are the Jan doubles, 30,000 of those. Number 3, 26,000 of the NOV 40s. Number 4, 22,000 of the NOV 27 puts. And again, rounding out the top 5 today, 20K of the Jan 35s. Now, this is interesting, Mr. Rocklops. They put it up this morning. They did it a couple of times, 10,000 by 5,000 times. Looks like dumping the 35 calls for 296, buying 5 of the Jan 70s for 75 cents. They did it a couple of times. Interestingly enough, there already is some size open on this strike. In fact, exactly this size, 2 by 10. so there's 20,000 by 100,000 already open on these strikes, the Jan 35s and the Jan 7. They opened it back on September 1st when they rolled the OC 35.75 to the Jan 30.70. So they already rolled 20,000 by 100,000, and now it looks like they're doing another 20 by 100. It doesn't seem like they're taking it off. It'd be interesting timing to take it off. What are your thoughts on this 1 by 5 going up again for size today, Mr. Rock Lobster?
I wonder if they're closing it.
It doesn't seem like it's going up that way.
Yeah, because it looks like they're still looks like they're selling the 35s and then buying the 70s still. So
that's kind of the way it's been going the whole time.
Yeah, it's kind of the same direction. Well, I mean, they are picking up the lowest vol they could find. At least for the lowest vol print, I believe, of the last at least 2 months. Let me see here. So if we're looking at January vol in VIX, I'm gonna say, see here. I mean, yeah, they're picking up this is the lowest it's been in. Wow, it's the lowest it's been in 6 months. So you can't fault them for wanting to buy some at the low. That's a lot better than nothing. So you can't fault them for the purchase, especially if they're, let's see, 75 times 5 is, what is that? $3, $3.75. So what are they're doing that for about even money, on that trade? Let me see here. I believe, yeah, almost, because you
like
got
50 cents or so. Yeah.
Like, so they're only paying 75 cents net for 5-by-1 contracts. I mean, I can see why they're doing it. So, I mean, maybe they're just loading up on Vega, and I don't think it's a terrible trade right now. But the window on that trade being able to produce is you would need to have a good vol pop between now and the end of November, I would think. Once you start getting into December, 35.70 gets a little iffy as far as performance. You might get enough Vega on the upside to make it work, but
it's interesting. Why buy one when you could buy 2 for twice the price, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
They're putting it on again. You're right. My first blush was the same thing. Maybe they're taking it off, but it didn't seem like it was lining up that way. And it would be interesting timing to take it off now anyway, not perhaps ideal. So they're deciding in for a penny, in for a pound. 1 by 5 listeners. You like that? Jan 35.70 going in for 2 for. Then they flipped the script yesterday, Mr. Rocklabs. This is kind of interesting. This might be one of my favorite flyers of the year because just we haven't seen anything like this for quite some time. Yesterday, 595,000 contracts on the tape yesterday. And the big dog yesterday, also 100,000 lot, Mr. Rock Lobster. Someone came in yesterday and just scooped up 100,000 of the June 15 puts. They paid 9 cents for those, Mr. Rock Lobster. What say you? June 15 puts. It's all done by next June. What do you think?
Exactly. Well, I mean, from a percentage basis, you would think, yes, it is possible for us to get to 15 vol by June. I think just historically, vol has to come down eventually. So I like the way they picked a contract, though, that basically will not decay at all for the next 4 months. Because there's almost like, I don't know, what's the theta on that contract? Maybe 0.75% per month or something.
Yeah,
it can't be
negligible.
Very much.
Yeah.
I don't think that actually is a bad, that's a bad purchase.
No, I love this. I think this is hilarious to me. I love everything about this trade here. The 9. I think we should put it on in oddities just to piggyback it and have fun with it. because it's
well, we could talk about it every week.
Yes.
Sure. It wouldn't bother me.
Where are they?
This is the kind of
they're still at 9 cents.
9 cents. Yeah, I could go to $1 easily.
VIX fell from 30 to 20. They're still at 12 cents.
Yeah. I think if we actually had a real drop to 20, and it was like, it was a real sentiment change, you might get a little love.
Yeah, you could get a little love out of those. Yes, I like everything about it. It's just so out there. It's completely the opposite of all the other paper we're seeing. Right? It's all crazy 1x5s and upside for days. And here we have someone saying, the hell with all of that. I'm going to take 100,000 of the 15 puts for 9 cents. And that also goes to show you just how little love there is for any of this put wing, because it's 9 freaking cents all the way out to June. Granted, it's a 15 strike, but still, I mean, you're getting a lot of living for 9 cents here.
You are. And I think this also says we're not the only two people on the planet that had their VIX puts just evaporate in their face.
Yes, exactly. This guy's like coming back for a vengeance. He's like, you want to make my VIX 25s in October go away? I'll raise you 100,000 of the June 15s. Revenge trading at its finest. I love it.
Yes, I think that could be the revenge trade. And like it will give me great glee if we buy some of these and we close them for $1. I'll feel some sort of strange vindication.
That would be hilarious. I'm gonna have to pick some of these up just for emotional support for this person here, because this is just a hilarious trade. You like these, listeners? A June 15 puts. I can't even say it without laughing. For 9 cents, get in. There's all you could possibly want for 9 cents, listeners. Followed yesterday by 35,000 of the NOV 35s. Number 3, 30,000 of the D's 28. So actually some more reasonable strikes yesterday. 25,000 for number 4 of the May 20 puts. And number 5, 24,000 of the D's 30s. Wednesday, 617,000 contracts on the tape. The big dog, back to the usual stuff we're used to seeing out here. 88,000 of the NOV 90s, followed by number 2, 36,000 of the NOV 35. So more of that funky ratio fun. Number 3, 32,000 of the NOV 25 puts. Number 4, 30,000 of the D's 50s. And number 5, 30,000 as well of the NOV 27 puts. Tuesday was one of the more active days of the week. Obviously, we're not done yet today, but 741,000 contracts on the tape. The big dog there, now 100,000 lots on Tuesday. 38,000 of the OC 30 puts. Remember, of course, we're heading into expiration, so a lot of closing and rolling and adjusting going on there. That's why it's all October for the most part. Number 2, 27,000 of the OC 32 halves. Number 3, some NOV did sneak in there. 27,000 of the NOV 50s. Number 4, 24,000 of the OC 39 calls. And rounding out the top 5, 24,000 of the OC 35 calls. Monday, also a decently active day. It's been a pretty heavy week out here in VIX. 650,000 contracts on the tape. The big dog on Monday, 97,000 of the D's 60s, followed by 40,000 of the D's 26 puts. Number 3, 27,000 of the OC 40 calls. Number 4, 25,000 of the NOV 60s. And rounding out the top 5 this week on Monday, 21,000 of the OC 32 halves. Mr. Rock Lobster, outside of those awesome 1x5s and my favorite trade of the week so far, the June 15 puts, anything catching your eye out here in VIX options this week, sir?
Well, I have seen there has been some put buying, but as of right now, it's all just kind of gone to Palookaville. There hasn't been, nothing is really paying yet until we peel away from 30. So I think it's still a bit of suspended animation until the election. And then I think that will be it'll be interesting to see how the pricing works as we move into the election cycle. Well, we have 2 weeks to go. So I think that will be interesting, very interesting pricing. So I'm looking at waiting for the calendar trades around Nov 4, Nov 11, stuff like that. Not in VIX necessarily, but in SPY and stuff like that. That all stuff is always fun. But as we move closer to that, I'll be interested to see if there's any pickup in vol on the downside in the VIX options, because right now it's as cheap as I've ever seen it with VIX this high. Because normally there's a little play down there for vol coming in, but it doesn't exist right now.
As you speak, I'm going to put in a bid for those puts, Mr. Rock Lobster.
Yeah, I put in a
put.
dime bid for 100 of the 17s.
Oh, you're doing 17s? We are of a like mind. Tell you what, I'm going to annoy this person. I'm going to try to penny him on his 100,000 lot. See what happens. I'm going to say, give me some of those bad boys for 8 cents. What you got? He's going to hate me. All right, let's keep on rolling here. Out to our friends out there on the ETP front. Good old SPKX at a 30.5 today, down about 2.5 points. And good old Spiky at a 33, down 4.1. Spiky, of course, the levered 1.5 times product. Getting some more OI out there in the levered product. We see that with SVIX and UVIX now, too. More paper flocking to the levered products out there. Looks like the big dog coming into today in Spiky is the OC52s, followed by the OC51s, and then NOV 56s, OC54s, and OC45s. Obviously, all the OC paper going out today, so we'll see how they reshape the OI going forward. Still not a ton of paper out there in Spiky or SPKX. Mr. Rock Lobster, have you... I know the Meatball has dabbled with a few one lots out here. Have you played along or kept an eye on good old SPKX or Spiky, sir?
Oh, the Meatball has gone to the Spiky side. I have to say it. I have not yet. I will at some point. I'm still trying to look at UVIX and SVIX to see if it could get any. That the VXX, not them kind of giving up on that product, has kind of scarred me. Although I know that the Spikies are definitely it is a normally managed contract as opposed to the flimflammery over there at Barclays with VXX.
And I am filled for 8 cents, so this guy hates me. He just bought 100,000 for 9.
you marked him.
He hates me. He's like, who got those up? Right in his face. Yes, I am that guy. I am being that jerk to him. I do apologize. It is all done in the sense of solidarity there and emotional support out there. Let's go on out to our other ETP friends. A good old SVIX was at about a 1080 when we kicked off the show. That's up a whopping 0.8 of a point. It's at about a 1070 now, so it's giving up about 1/10 of a point out there. But not a ton of paper still accreting out there in SVIX. What we have seen with all these vol ETPs, these newer ones at least, is it does seem like our show day is the day for these. It's expiration, weekly expiration does tend to drive a lot of paper in these things. And so they kind of languish throughout the rest of the week. And then we talk about them on Friday and they have their best day of the week. SVIX still kind of languishing right now, but doing decent paper. 437,000 contracts on the tape. The ADV 826. So it was over 1,000 last week. It has come in a little bit. Looks like it's probably going to hit that ADV again today. In terms of what are the size positions out there in SVIX right now, it's the DEES 11s, about 2,100 of those, followed by 2,000 of the Jan 14 calls. Number 3, 1,300 of the DEES 12s. Number 4, 1,000 of the March 25s. And rounding out the top 5 in SVIX, about almost 900 of the DEES 5 puts. Getting out to UVIX was at a 1235 when we kicked off the show. That puts it down about 2.35 points from where it was this time last week. It's gained a dime since we started talking, so it's at about 1245 right now. In terms of paper, this one has obviously attracted more paper, and it continues to do so today. It's already put up 5,500 contracts today, and the ADV is 6575. So as you can see, it does numbers on a Friday. The ADV the rest of the week kind of doesn't do much. The ADV doesn't really budge, but it does numbers every show day. In terms of the top positions out here in UVIX, we have 2,000 of the DEES 18 puts for number 1, followed by 1,700 of the OC 11 puts for number 2, and then 1,500 for number 3 of the OC 12 calls. Number 4, 1,200 of the DEES 11 puts, and rounding out the top 5 in UVIX, 1,200 of the October 10.5 puts. Let's look really quickly and see what's going up today, because 5,500 contracts have gone up today. The big dog today are the October expiring next week, so on the 28th. The 11.5 puts have gone up about 1,500 times. That's the big dog out there today, followed by about 650 of the November expiring on the 4th 10 calls. So it's all weekly stuff out here. 500 of the OC expiring next week, 12.5 puts, 460 of the 14 calls also going out next week, and 230 of the 13 calls gone next week. So once again, it is all in the weeklies. Mr. Rock Lobster, have you or any of your crazies delved into our friends SVIX or UVIX this week, sir?
No, not this week. Like I said, there's still some liquidity problems and stuff with those, so we haven't hit those as of yet. But I think we are on our way to trading those soon. But of course, it'd be nice if vol moved.
Yeah. Come on, June 15 strike. Here we go, baby.
Come on, June.
Here we go. The road to riches begins with the June 15 puts. Let's get on out to good old UVXY 1180. When we kicked off the show, that puts it down pretty much 1.5 points from where it was this time last week. And it's at about 1188, so it has ticked up not even 1/10 of a point since we started talking out here. In terms of action, we got about $1.45 on the tape today. The ADV is 277. That is still down about 7,000 from this time last week. So UVXY eroding a little bit this week. In terms of top positions out there, we got about nearly 30,000 of the October 13 calls. Those are obviously going the way of the dodo. Doesn't seem like we're hitting 13 today, so it'll be interesting to see how those fare. Probably not well. Then number 2, we got the Jan 75s, 19,000 of those, I should say. Followed by number 3, 16,000 of the October 13 half puts. Number 4, 15,000 of the Nov 15 calls. Rounding out the top 5 in UVXY, we got about 15,000 almost as well of the October 12 puts. Those are right on the line right now, listeners. That's what makes it fun about UVXY. It always tends to go right towards one of those strikes, and it makes a lot of people sweat. So it looks like it's doing that right now with whoever's got those OC 12 puts on right now. In terms of action today, not surprising, it's the OC 12 calls that are leading the dance. 16,400 of those have gone up today. Maybe some folks taking flyers, maybe some folks closing them out. The OC 12 calls, that's looks like that's more than the OI because we don't have the OC 12 calls in our top 5 out there. So, yeah, it looks like there's some churning and burning going on in the 12 strike, as we see usually on expirations, followed by 8,400 of the 12 calls expiring next week, and then 7,000 of the OC 12 puts and 6,200 of the October 12 puts expiring next week. So it's all 12s all the time out here. Mr. Rock Lobster, have you folks abandoned UVXY or you still play out there?
No. It just UVXY right now pairs pretty well with other things that you're just expecting. You know, like the reality with UVXY right now is if you're going to buy a contract in there, you're on a vol pop, you're only expecting like 50 to 60 cents, 70 cents. You know, maybe you go to 12 to 13 or 11.5 to 13. So there's not a lot in it. So although the ups, they're cheap, I would call they're cheap hedges. So and you can produce if we get vol does move. So I've been trade I have on now is I do have some UVXY call spreads, but I'm long SPY. And today's a good day. So vol's not down very much, UVXY is not down very much. The hedge is barely moving, and SPY is taking off. So it's a good. I use it in a pair when we're either in backwardation or we're flat. And we're a little backward this week, so if like the sadness continues, like UVXY will slowly kind of creep up, and it's useful that way. So UVXY is still a good vehicle as long as you have a reasonable expectation what it can produce.
All right, and VXX still kind of doing its thing, listeners, still chugging along at about a 20 even when we kicked off the show, still hanging out there, down about 1.6. 39,000 contracts on the tape today. The ADV is 53,000. It's unched from this time last week, so it hasn't really gained any paper, but it hasn't lost any either, so I suppose that is something. In terms of top positions out there, these are also a pale shadow of what is open out there, listeners. It was VXX, yeah, not exactly blowing the world up on fire. There we go. The top positions out there are 19,000 of the OC 19 half puts expiring next week, And then 15,000 for number 2 of the October 40 calls expiring today. Number 3, 15,000 as well of the Jan 3 puts. Those are the pre-split adjusted ones, the VXX1. Number 4, 14,000 of the OC 40 puts. And rounding out the top 5 in VXX right now, the OC 16 puts, 13,000 of those bad boys. In terms of earnings, if you like some single name vol, well, we got it for you in spades this week, listeners. A lot of big names were popping off this week. You know, Goldman, J&J, Hasbro, Tesla, NASDAQ, Beamer, Bank of America, Chucky Schwab, Snap, screwing the pooch yesterday. All kinds of fun out there. Luckily for you folks out there, we have all the updated earnings move results, and earnings season reports out there for you listeners. You can check it out for yourselves. You know where to go. TheOptionsInsider.com is the place to go. Let's look up really quickly because Snap was the big one making headlines out there. Listen, obviously they were off quite a bit in the after hours. Let's see if some of this, still off nearly 30%. So yes, they were yesterday after the bell. They went into their announcement, $10.86, listeners. They were pricing in $2.17. And in the past, they moved $2.33. So it was actually a little bit light on the straddle front out there for them, listeners. And so far, they're off about 3.25%. So nearly 30%. So they were pricing in some action, but not enough. And yeah, this thing taking it on the chin. You know, it seems like Snap is very much the bellwether for what's happening out there in some of these social media / in this case, camera companies, because that's what Snap is. Trading right around $7.50 right now. See how low did it get? Got as low as $7.33 out there. So yeah, not exactly a boom period for them. Coming up this week, we got Google, Microsoft, all kinds of fun stuff on the docket. We had Tesla earlier this week, Southwest, Mickey D's, Apple. You may have heard of them. I mean, we've lucky for you folks, we've got earnings move reports for all of them. You can check it out. What is the market pricing in? What have they done in the past? How does this compare? What's going on with the season? So far right now, the season, listeners, hanging out at a whopping 147%. But then again, only 30 names have reported so far. So we got to get a bigger sample before we can definitively say. But last season, we hung out at about 85%, or I should say the average so far since the start of the pandemic has been about 85%. So we'll see if we can top that. Last season was about 115 or so. So we'll see if we can top that again this week. Looks like we are already adding to the fun out there, loading up on straddles in Sam's Club and also calendars in Whirlpool. So check those out for yourselves. What are the dates? What are the prices? What are the strikes? What are they putting on? What are they taking off? All sorts of earnings trades for you folks to take a look at over there because we like you folks for free. TheOptionsInsider.com. Click on the options news and articles tab. I'll put it out there. I'll say this is some of the best, if not the best, earnings data you're going to get out there, and certainly for free. Unless you go contact a big house like Goldman and say, do a custom report for me. That's not going to be free. And I argue ours would still probably be better. So check it out over there, TheOptionsInsider.com. See what Matt and his team have cooked up for you folks as we keep on cooking up our vol prognostications. It is time for the crystal ball.
It's time to peer into the future and reveal what the volatility gods hold in store. It's time to look into the crystal ball.
All right, everybody, welcome to the crystal ball. And as we're coming into the end of the show, we're hanging out not that far from where we started the show, listeners. And for some reason, I'm having a hard time getting my spikes quotes up here. There we go. So it's VIX hanging out a little bit shy of the 30 handle, which is pretty much right where it was when we kicked off the show, right around the 29.80 or so. Spikes at about 30.25. So we have pretty much literally not budged from where we were this time last week. And Mr. Rock Lobster, you're not looking too bad. 29.83 or so here. 29.99 is what you were at. So you were 0.16 away on this. Spikes, you're about 0.28 away. So you're close. VIX just ticked down. That ain't helping your cause. But you were within 0.16. It is fluid. Tell you what, generous guy that I am, Mr. Rock Lobster, I will give it to you. I will say, you know what? Because if I had looked at it maybe 30 seconds earlier, you could have been in there, right? VIX is moving. So I will give it to you. Congratulations, Mr. Rock Lobster. A bullseye for you, $29.99.
Oh, I don't know. I'm going to put this on my wall. You know what? I feel like, those aces in World War I, they used to put the things on their wall when they took down the German, or the Germans took down the Americans. I feel like you don't get a bullseye very often. At least I don't. So I'm very proud of my bullseye.
Take it. I had to expand the goalpost for you a little bit. That's Meatball's been asking me to do that forever. Make it wider, but we got to keep it tight. But you were pretty close. And in this market, I will be lenient. Matt was at a 31.5. Matt McFarland, of course, from MyX. I was at a 30.85, so I was looking pretty good. I'm about exactly a point away on VIX and about 0.6 away on SPKEX. Of course, I was looking pretty good until I wasn't. So, c'est la vie. The vol gods are capricious, listeners. Listener-wise, let's see. 32s, 32 halves, 31.70 seems like that is the closest I see here. Got some 33s. Yeah, it looks like 31.70 is about the closest we've got here. So it looks like no winner chicken dinner this week. So Mr. Rock Lobster, as our exalted winner, sir, what do you feel like doing? You want to go first or you want to go last?
I'll go first. I have because I own these 27 puts, and I know we're going to go to 27 and they're probably not going to move. I'm going to say 27.25 for Friday.
You're not talking your book at all. Not
at all. Not at all. So listeners, just cover your ears.
We're going to shoot
your ears
straight to the 27 strike, and you're going to be down money on those puts. That's what's going to happen. Just complete vol collapse on the 27 put strike out there. So 27.25, and north of 30 in spikes, south of 30 in VIX. We're kind of hanging out right at that line, listeners. I don't hate not that far away from this level for this time next week again. So I was 30.85. I'm going to take it down a notch. I'm going to say 30.25 this week. So there's your market, listeners. Exactly 3 points wide. 27.25 on the dark side for the Rock Lobster, and 30.25 for the right answer for me. All right, listeners. That music means we come to the end of Volatility Views. For all of you on-demand listeners, that's going to conclude your broadcast week. I want to thank you for joining us out here throughout the week. We love you all out there. If you like what you hear, keep rating and reviewing. And, of course, if you want your broadcast week to continue, you want to get some fun live trading and unusual activity and all sorts of badness unfolding in a little bit on options oddities. You also want to get access to that Harvard Business School session we did last night and a whole bunch more. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro is the place to go to join that journey to the dark side out there. Mr. Rock Lobster, if folks want to learn more about all things Pitt, where should they go? What should they do?
Call it easiest thing. Call Ted or other Andrew 888-TRADE-01. You got questions. We got answers. We got answers about options. And say, hey, if you heard this show, you're going to get 10% off any option pit product if you say, hey, I found you by the Option Insider Radio Network. There you go.
There you go. That's off everything except the life-size cardboard cutout of Andrew that is full price. There are no deals. There are no deals on the
Nobody rides for free.
Nobody. That's big money. You got to pay through the nose for that. But if you want the life-size Andrew in your life, full price, everything else 10% off. OptionPit.com is the place to go. And you know where to go to learn more about all things spikes. MyAxOptions.com/spikes. If you haven't been there in a little bit, check it out. They have some interesting new cool stuff, and they're adding new stuff all the time, including links to a fun show called Volatility Views. What more could you possibly ask for from a vol destination? But they have great analytics, other cool stuff, and it looks like they're adding a lot of new stuff. And I've heard whispers and rumors of new stuff coming, so check it out, MyAxOptions.com/spikes. For all of you on-demand folks, have a great weekend. For all of you pro folks, we'll see you all in a little bit. And for all of you out there, we'll see you back here next week, another episode of Volatility Views. Stay safe out there, everybody.
Volatility Views is brought to you by MyAx, one of the fastest, most efficient trading platforms in the world. MyAx is proud to bring you SPKEX volatility products. SPKEX options and futures are traded on the SPKEX Volatility Index, SPKE, offering pinpoint accuracy, radically faster dissemination, and a highly transparent settlement auction, all for ultra-low exchange fees. It's volatility reimagined. Learn more about spikes at myaxoptions.com/spikes. Options and futures involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. The statements made are provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied on for financial or legal advice. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.